So we've established that you can get a really accurate sound with acoustic treatment and a tool like Sound ID Reference. But for a lot of people producing music, that's simply out of reach. Acoustic treatment and quality monitors and the space to set them up properly, those things can add up really quickly. And many of the most talented producers making music right now are doing it in spaces that were never designed for audio. For them, the ideal solution isn't really an option. But even for those who have invested in a reliable setup, there's still another problem. What happens when you have to leave your room? Maybe you're traveling and need to keep working, or you're collaborating at a different studio. In both cases, headphones become a natural fallback. They're affordable, they're portable, and they remove the room from the equation entirely. That sounds like a really good solution, but headphones come with their own set of problems that are worth exploring before we talk about how to fix them. Headphones definitely have a place in the studio, but if you've used them to mix, then you know that they are not the same as studio monitors. There are some key differences between headphones and speakers in general, and they're worth understanding because they explain why headphones are such a difficult mixing tool. The first thing headphones take away is crossfeed. When you're sitting in front of a pair of speakers, your left ear doesn't only hear what the left speaker produces, it also hears the right speaker. Just a fraction of a second later, and with a slightly different frequency response because the sound has to travel across your head to reach the left ear. That small delay and that subtle filtering is a part of how your brain builds a picture of how sounds are arranged in space. Headphones eliminate that. Each ear only hears its own channel, which is why stereo width can feel exaggerated on headphones, and why certain elements feel like they're inside your head rather than out in front of you. In fact, a mix that feels perfectly wide in headphones will usually end up sounding narrow on speakers. The second thing headphones take away is the room itself. When you listen on speakers, the sound interacts with the space around you. You hear early reflections off the walls, a sense of depth comes from that, and a feeling of being in an environment. Headphones are essentially anechoic, which means the only reverb that you hear is already in the recording itself, which changes how you might make decisions about space and depth in that mix. These two things together explain a lot of why mixes made exclusively on headphones can sometimes feel narrow with too much reverb or even oddly balanced when played back on speakers. Just a quick note for those who are mixing on headphones. In the show notes below this video, you can find the free headphone mixing guide. It includes the differences between studio monitor mixing and headphone mixing, and some practical tips for adjusting how you mix if you're mixing on headphones. That guide will help you make better mixes on headphones that will translate to speakers and vice versa. So you can download that with the link below or at audiouniversityonline.com/headphone mixing guide. Okay, back to the video. But there's a third problem also, and it's really related to the first two. That filtering I mentioned earlier actually has a name, and it goes much deeper than just the crossfeed between your two speakers. It's called the head-related transfer function, or HRTF, and it describes the way sound is shaped by your ears, your head, and your body before it reaches your eardrums. Every time sound travels through space toward you, it gets filtered in very specific ways, depending on where it's coming from. A sound coming from your left side arrives at your left ear slightly before your right ear. A sound coming from above gets shaped differently by the curve of your outer ear than the sound that comes from below. Your brain uses all of that information to figure out where sounds are in three-dimensional space. It happens constantly and naturally, and you're unaware of it for the most part. But when you listen through speakers in a room, all of this is happening naturally by a function of you listening in a space. Your ears are doing their job, and the room is adding its reflections, and your brain is assembling a more complete spatial picture than you can get in headphones, because headphones bypass all of that. There's no crossfeed, there's no room, and no HRTF experience. And understanding all of these concepts I've just shared with you is the basis for the trend that I mentioned at the beginning of the video.